The frost bit through the air like it held a personal grudge. Wind slashed across the open shore of Lake Superior, carrying a sting that could cut through double layers of thermal wear. The sky was a pale blue, stretched wide above a crowd of bundled-up humans gathered near a long, roped-off section of ice that had been sawed open into a neat rectangle. Emergency workers in waterproof suits stood alongside volunteers with towels, hot cocoa, and foil blankets. It was Polar Bear Plunge Day in Duluth, Minnesota. Yale Emmer stood near the edge of the crowd, tugging his wool cap lower over his ears. His breath fogged the air as he glanced at the digital thermometer on a nearby post, 12 degrees Fahrenheit. The water wouldn't be much warmer. "You sure this is the spot?" Yale asked, turning to the tall, pale blue alien beside him. "I am positive," Vurnix replied, his three eyes blinking in unsynchronized confusion. "Why are they voluntarily entering near freezing water? Is this a punishment ritual?" "Charity," Yale said, clapping his gloved hands together. "It's for raising money. Donations go to local shelters and food banks." Vurnix's head did a small pivot. The way Yale had learned meant disbelief. They could fund these things without harming their physiology. Yale shrugged. "Well, humans do a lot of things that don't make sense." Another alien, thinner and with a faint shimmer to her skin, stepped up beside Vurnix. The briefing packet said humans avoided extremes, that they relied on climate control, comfort systems, and stable environments. "That's mostly true, Jexa," Yale replied. "But we also voluntarily strap ourselves to boards and surf 30-foot waves, run 50-mile races through deserts, and jump out of airplanes for fun." Jexa's upper limbs folded across her chest. "This does not align with your species profile." Yale laughed once, then pointed toward the lake. "You'll want to update that profile in about 10 minutes. A booming voice from a portable speaker drew the attention of everyone nearby. "All right, folks. First group up, Group A, come to the gate." A cheer went up. Yale's breath caught slightly as a dozen people in swimsuits, bathrobes, and even a man dressed as a reindeer made their way toward the icy opening. "Why are they celebrating?" Vurnix asked. "Because it's fun," Yale said. "Explain how hypothermia is fun." "It's not. But surviving it sort of is exhilarating. It's like proving you can do something your body says you can't." Jexa's skin shimmered brighter. "Biological contradiction. Welcome to Earth." The first jumper, a young woman in a Wonder Woman costume, ran up, yelled something unintelligible through the wind, and jumped with a splash that sent up a mist of ice water. She surfaced a second later, gasping and flailing toward the ladder, where two volunteers hoisted her out and wrapped her in a blanket. Vurnix tilted his head. "She appears to be in distress." "She's fine," Yale said, though he winced when the next guy belly flopped in with a yelp. "Why is this sanctioned?" Jexa asked. "Because people sign waivers. And the medics are right there." She turned to Yale. "You are participating, are you not?" "Nope, you are not." Yale pulled his scarf tighter. "I did it once. That was plenty." Vurnix pointed toward the lake. "So you understand the pain and risk, and yet you attend again willingly?" "It's tradition," Yale replied. As more participants jumped in, yelled, flailed, and were hauled out, the alien observers began murmuring among themselves in low tones. Yale had invited them as part of a cultural exchange program between Earth and the Mocaran Alliance. The aliens had been on Earth for 10 weeks, mostly visiting universities, hospitals, and government centers. They had concluded that humanity's forward-facing technologies, climate-controlled architecture, and safety measures meant humans were inherently cautious, even fragile. This event was not helping that theory. "Oh, look," Yale said, pointing. "That guy's got a rubber chicken." "What is the purpose of that?" Jexa asked. "Comic relief. Why would humor be necessary during a high-risk activity?" Yale shrugged. "Takes the edge off." Vurnix stepped closer to the barrier rope. "I am logging this entire event. It may require a re-evaluation of your species' psychological models." "Good," Yale said, "because you've only seen the tip of the iceberg." Another cheer erupted as a local fireman did a cannonball into the water, followed by a woman in a penguin suit. A small boy, maybe 7 or 8, slipped and fell while running to the dock, and Yale instinctively moved forward. But a volunteer caught the kid and helped him up before anything serious happened. "Do injuries occur frequently?" Jexa asked. "Sometimes," Yale said. "They've got precautions. No one jumps alone, and there are always spotters." The alien's gaze lingered on the chilled boy being wrapped in a thermal blanket. "This resembles a test of pain tolerance, or a test of community," Yale said. You do something hard together. It bonds people. Vurnix was silent for a moment. Then he said, I would like to attempt it. Yale blinked. What? I wish to participate. That's not a good idea. I have studied human physiology. I can develop a thermal buffer under my dermal layer. No offense, but watching from over here is probably best. Jexa's eyes narrowed. Are you refusing him the chance to understand your culture? Yale sighed. You're alien students, not daredevils. I am submitting myself to the process, Vurnix said, already moving toward the registration booth. You'll need a waiver, Yale called after him. I have read the fine print. Jexa looked at Yale. I will observe from here. You sure? I am not reckless. Yale waved her off. Smart move. The next 15 minutes passed in a blur of more plunges, screams of exhilaration and discomfort, and the increasingly confused stares of passing aliens who had come to spectate. Then came Vurnix's turn. He stepped up to the edge, now wearing a borrowed pair of swim trunks and a shirt emblazoned with Team Frostbite. The crowd fell momentarily quiet. A few whispered, Is that an alien? Oh my God, he's gonna do it. Vurnix raised a hand and said, For the pursuit of understanding. Then he jumped. The splash was enormous. He surfaced quickly, but his face was contorted in something between agony and awe. Assistance, he sputtered. 2 volunteers rushed in, grabbing his arms and dragging him toward the ladder. His limbs twitched involuntarily. Yale jogged forward. You okay? It is. Cold. No kidding. I am experiencing what I believe to be muscle spasms. Yeah, you'll shake for a bit. Vurnix was helped into a heated tent nearby, where a medic wrapped him in foil and checked his vitals. Yale followed, glancing back to see Jexa filming everything. Inside the tent, Vurnix's skin had taken on a faint green tinge. Is that normal? Yale asked the medic. For him? No idea. Vurnix's voice was shaky. My internal temperature dropped rapidly. I am re-evaluating my enthusiasm. Yale nodded. You're not the first. The medic ran a portable scanner over Vurnix's torso. You're stable. We'll keep you under observation for an hour. I wish to note, Vurnix said, that I no longer believe humans avoid extremes. Yale chuckled. Noted. An hour later, Vurnix was sipping a cup of cocoa while wrapped in 3 blankets, his muscles still twitching occasionally. Jexa stepped into the tent. You look half dead, she said. I feel half dead, Vurnix replied. Yet you chose this. I thought it would enhance my research. Jexa turned to Yale. Are there other such events? Sure. There's the cheese rolling in England. Firewalking in Fiji. Marathon disables in the Sahara. Jexa stared. You are a species built on contradiction. Yale grinned. We're full of surprises. Vurnix sipped his cocoa. I will not be repeating this experience. You said that about skydiving, Jexa said. That was before my respiratory sacs inverted. Yale raised an eyebrow. You went skydiving? It was part of our semester's extracurriculars. Yale leaned back in his chair. I need to re-evaluate your program director. Vurnix and Jexa exchanged a look. Then Jexa said, Perhaps it is not only humans who seek extremes. Yale looked from her to Vurnix, then out toward the lake where another group was plunging in. Maybe we're not so different after all. Jexa blinked slowly. No. You're still insane. Yale laughed, then winced as a man slipped on the dock and landed hard. Medics rushed over. Is he hurt? Jexa asked. Yale peered through the window. Looks like he landed on his knee. Might be a fracture. Will he recover? Eventually. Might take months, depending. But he'll be back next year. Jexa stared at him. Why? Yale shrugged. Because it matters. Doing something hard, something dumb, with other people it matters. She said nothing for a long moment. Then, quietly, and you do this for charity? Yeah. Jexa looked again at the man being helped into the medical tent. I still do not understand. Yale handed her a cup of cocoa. You don't have to. Just know that it's real. The wind had settled by late afternoon, but the cold remained sharp and unapologetic. The tent, though heated, was still too drafty for Vurnix's liking. He'd been moved to a cot near the back, draped in layers of synthetic fleece and surrounded by discarded foil blankets that crinkled any time he shifted. The slight tremor in his limbs had finally faded, replaced by a sluggishness he couldn't quite shake. You're metabolizing slower than the others, said Mel, the on-site paramedic, kneeling beside him with a small handheld scanner. Probably because your circulation works on a different system. I'm guessing your blood doesn't constrict the way ours does in the cold. It channels through looped vascular segments, Vurnix said, blinking slowly. They seize in extreme temperatures. I did not anticipate that. Well, you're stable now, but you should stay horizontal for a while. You might feel lightheaded if you stand too fast. Jexa loomed behind her, arms folded, eyes fixed on Vurnix like she was observing a museum artifact that had started leaking. You're aware this was preventable? Mel raised an eyebrow. He signed the waiver. I'm aware, Jexa said. I just didn't expect him to actually follow through. Vurnix turned his head. You've read the literature on cultural immersion. Yes. And it doesn't usually involve risking organ shutdown. Mel stood, pocketing the scanner. He's doing better than some of the locals, honestly. We had 2 mild cases of hypothermia earlier. One guy's teeth haven't stopped chattering in an hour. Jexa looked at Vurnix again. You look like someone tried to freeze-dry you. I feel like a sack of damp gravel. That's an improvement. Mel stepped away to check another participant, and Jexa pulled over one of the folding chairs. She sat, letting her gaze drift to the open tent flap where the lake was still visible. From here, the edge of the ice looked like a fractured window pane under the low sun. Why do they keep going in? She asked quietly. Even after seeing what happens? Vurnix made a sound that might have been a laugh. Because they have short memories? No. It's more deliberate than that. He shifted on the cot, wincing as the blanket shifted. The young one in the feathered costume, she smiled as they pulled her out. I noticed. Jexa leaned back. So it's not just ignorance. Definitely not. She was quiet again, but her fingers tapped against the chair's arm in an irregular rhythm. I've attended dozens of controlled stress trials. They're structured, monitored, repeatable. This is none of those things. It's uncontrolled chaos, and yet they treat it as a social right. Vurnix exhaled slowly. They don't see it as chaos. They see it as voluntary discomfort within safe boundaries. Safe. Jexa gestured toward him. You can't move your secondary limbs. I'm regaining function. With tremors. That's within tolerance. Jexa's tapping stopped. You're justifying it. I'm contextualizing it. There's a difference. Mel returned with a cup of something steaming and handed it to Vurnix. Drink this. It's just broth. We found it helps better than sugar after events like this. He took it with both hands, the warmth seeping into his skin almost instantly. Thank you. Mel nodded. Yale says you're part of some exchange thing? Yes. Observational study on interspecies behavioral variance. She smiled faintly. Well, you picked a hell of a place to start. I didn't anticipate this level of voluntary exposure. That's Duluth for you. When Mel left again, Vurnix sipped the broth slowly. It was salty and thin, but the heat spread through his core like a rekindled furnace. I'm not sure the others will believe this, Jexa said. They'll have to. We have visual records. Biometric logs. They'll assume we misinterpreted the context. Vurnix tilted his head. We didn't. Jexa stood. There's a group outside trying to pull a couch onto the lake. He blinked. Why? I didn't ask. Vurnix sighed, setting the cup down on the crate beside him. I'll need to write a full deviation report. Jexa paused near the flap. You think this is a deviation? It doesn't follow any of the behavioral patterns we cataloged before arrival. That doesn't make it an error. He looked up. What would you call it? She considered. An outlier. But not a mistake. Outside, the sound of laughter cut through the wind. Someone yelled something unintelligible, followed by a splash and more cheers. Jexa stepped out of the tent. It was nearly dark when she returned. The last of the plungers had been cleared off the ice, and the volunteers were beginning to pack up the tables and heaters. She tucked a folded sheet of paper into her coat. They gave me a flyer, she said. There's a chili cook-off tomorrow. Same organizers. Will there be submersion involved? No. Just ingestion. Significantly safer. Jexa sat again. I might go. Vurnix looked at her. You're curious. I'm recalibrating. It's required. Yale appeared in the flap, rubbing his hands together. He looked tired, his cheeks red from wind exposure. They're shutting down the lake area. EMTs are heading out. Understood, Jexa said. Vurnix can walk if he goes slow. But no stairs yet. I can assist, Jexa said. Yale pointed toward a nearby van. We've got the transport warmed up. It's full of heated seats and suspiciously strong coffee. Vurnix raised a hand. I'm not prepared for another stimulant. Then just sit near the vents. We'll be back at campus before dinner. Jexa helped him up. His legs buckled slightly, but he stayed upright with her support. She didn't comment on the way he leaned against her. As they stepped out into the dusk, the lake behind them had begun to glaze over again. The open rectangle had been taped off, and a thin fog was creeping in from the north. Vurnix paused. "What is it?" Jexa asked. He looked back at the ice. "I expected them to be more cautious. They're not. No. They're deliberate. But unbound." He turned to her. "It's not recklessness. It's defiance." He nodded once. "Yes." She adjusted her grip on his arm. "That explains the flaming couch." He blinked. "What?" She pointed toward the far end of the lake, where a group of college students stood in a circle around what was unmistakably a small bonfire atop a discarded love seat. One of them was holding a banjo. Yale squinted. "I told them no accelerants." Jexa didn't look away. "There's no protocol for this." "There never is," Yale said. "You just get used to it." Vurnix exhaled. "We'll need to reframe the entire case study." "Good," Jexa said, "because I'm not writing another section on climate control behavior." They helped Vurnix into the van. The heater blasted his face as soon as the door closed, and he slumped into the back seat with a groan. Jexa slid in beside him. "You know they're going to ask why you did it." "I'll tell them the truth." Jexa leaned back. "Which is?" He closed his eyes. "Because I wanted to understand something that didn't make sense." Yale started the engine. "That's the most human reason there is." As the van pulled away from the lake, the bonfire flickered behind them, casting shadows across the ice. A voice shouted something about marshmallows. Vurnix didn't open his eyes. "We're going to need more translators." The next morning, the sky over Duluth was smeared with the kind of gray that promised nothing but slush. A light snow had fallen overnight, dusting the sidewalks and benches outside the community center where the post-plunge debrief was being held. Officially, it was called a Civic Engagement Roundtable, but the folding chairs and lukewarm coffee gave it the ambience of a PTA meeting that had lost momentum before it began. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of damp wool, overcooked chili, and the lingering aroma of liniment. Vurnix sat at the far end of the room, posture rigid, a foam cushion tucked behind his back. He was dressed in layered human attire, thermal undershirt, university hoodie, and a pair of sweatpants that had "Property of Duluth County Correctional Facility" stamped on the thigh. He had not asked questions when the clothing was issued. Across from him, Jexa was hunched over a legal pad, scribbling notes with mechanical precision. Her antennae were covered by an ear warmer in the shape of a cat's face. No one had commented on it. Yale, seated between them, swirled his coffee with a plastic stirrer and watched the cluster of local volunteers shuffle papers at the front. A woman named Marlene, organizer, accountant, and chili judge, was preparing to speak. "You look like you slept upright," Yale said quietly. "I did," Vurnix replied. "Horizontal positioning still induces joint misalignment." "Did the medic sign off on you being here?" "She said I was not in immediate danger of collapse." "Well, that's as close to a green light as you'll get around here." Jexa didn't look up. He refused wheelchair assistance. "I did not wish to appear compromised. You were dragged out of a lake. And now I am sitting upright, unaided." Marlene cleared her throat at the front of the room. "All right, folks. Let's get started. First, a big thank you to everyone who made yesterday's event a success. We raised just over $28,000, which is up from last year by nearly $6,000. Muted applause rippled through the group. Vurnix blinked slowly. "Do you wish to clap?" Jexa asked. "I am evaluating whether this outcome justifies the frostbite." "No one got frostbite," Yale said. "Just mild exposure and some bruised egos." "Still evaluating," Marlene continued. "We had a few minor injuries, 2 slips, 1 sprained wrist, and a pulled groin. EMTs confirmed no hospitalizations, so that's a win in my book." Jexa whispered, "What is a groin?" "It's a region," Yale said. "You'd rather not pull anything in it." "I see." Marlene moved to the next topic. "Now, logistics. We had an unusual addition to the lineup this year, our first interplanetary guest. Vurnix, would you be willing to share a few words?" Vurnix stiffened. Yale leaned over. "You don't have to." "I am capable," Vurnix said, then rose, joints popping audibly. The room quieted as he hobbled forward, stopping beside the table of raffle prizes. He looked at the humans before speaking. "Your event was alarming." A few chuckles. He continued. "I submerged myself in water colder than the average temperature of my planet's upper atmosphere. My body reacted poorly. I experienced temporary neuromuscular dysfunction and involuntary vocalizations. I do not recommend this as a casual experience." More laughter now, some nodding. However, he said, I observed something I had not anticipated. Cohesion. People of varying physiology, age, and attire subjected themselves to discomfort with no tangible reward. There was no currency, no accolades, only shared exertion. He paused, eyes scanning the room. This appears to be central to your culture. You construct difficulty deliberately and then praise each other for enduring it. It is inefficient, but compelling. When he sat down again, the applause was much louder. Marlene wiped her eyes with a napkin. Well, I think that was the most honest speech we've ever had. Thank you, Vurnix. Yale leaned in. You didn't mention the part where your vision blurred for 2 hours. It would have undermined my closing sentiment. The meeting continued with discussion of next year's plans, but Vurnix had tuned out. He was watching the faces in the room, aged, flushed, some visibly aching, others half listening while sipping coffee. They looked satisfied, not triumphant, but fortified in some intangible way. When the session ended, people began to disperse. Marlene made her way to their corner of the room, holding a plastic bag. I thought you might want this, she said, handing it to Vurnix. Inside was the t-shirt he'd worn during the plunge. It was still damp. Thank you, Vurnix said. You'll get a patch, too. We're sewing them this week. A patch? Yeah, to say you did it. We've got a wall of them at the town hall. You'll be the first non-human up there. Vurnix looked down at the shirt. I will preserve it as a cautionary artifact. Marlene patted his shoulder. You're a good sport. As she left, Jexa stood and stretched. I'd like to leave this room before my joints fuse. Agreed, Vurnix said, rising carefully. Yale walked them to the van outside, where snow was beginning to fall again in soft flakes. So, he said, evaluation complete? For this event, Jexa replied. We'll need a full annex for the report back home. Think you'll recommend more observation? She tilted her head. Possibly. But we'll need different parameters. Less about avoidance. More about adaptation under self-imposed duress. Yale smiled. That's a mouthful. We usually just call it being stubborn. Vurnix stepped into the van, breathing out slowly as the heater kicked in. I have concluded, he said, that humans do not seek comfort. They seek contrast. Yale paused. What do you mean? They create pain to better appreciate the absence of it. They embrace cold to remember heat. Discomfort is not the point. The return is. Jexa climbed in after him. I'm still not doing it next year. No one's asking you to, Yale said, pulling the door closed. The van pulled away from the community center, tires crunching through light snow. Vurnix leaned back, watching the town pass by in slow motion. Lights in windows. Smoke from chimneys. People walking dogs in coats that matched their own. No one seemed to be in a hurry. Do you regret it? Jexa asked without looking at him. I do not. You almost passed out. I also laughed. Once. Yale raised an eyebrow in the rearview mirror. Really? When? When the man in the inflatable dinosaur costume slipped and cursed at the water. Jexa turned. You laughed. I didn't say it was audible. Yale chuckled. We'll count it. By the time they reached the dormitory, the snow had begun to stick. A few students were building a crooked snow person near the entrance, arguing over whether to use bananas or buttons for eyes. Vurnix stepped out of the van, steadier now, and nodded to the pair. Is this a ritual? He asked. Just Tuesday, Yale said. Inside, the front desk attendant waved them through. Vurnix stopped at the elevator, eyes fixed on a bulletin board. What's that? He asked, pointing. Jexa glanced up. It says, upcoming events. Ice fishing derby. Sled race. Candlelit yoga. Vurnix didn't speak. Yale clapped him gently on the back. Don't worry. None of those involve voluntary hypothermia. Are you certain? Reasonably. Jexa hit the elevator button. We'll see. As the doors closed behind them, Vurnix let out a long, slow breath. His muscles still ached. His skin still tingled in places. But his mind was clearer than it had been in days. Next report, he said. We begin with a warning label. Jexa nodded. And a disclaimer. Yale leaned against the wall. Make sure to include the chili cook-off. You haven't seen anything until you've watched someone cry over ghost peppers. Vurnix considered this. I may observe. From a safe distance. No plunging. Never again. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. All three stepped out, leaving behind the cold, the lake, the plunge, and every assumption they brought with them.